Hello, I'm here with Doug to talk about third worlding America and other things. It's Friday, April 11, 2025. And I've got the Trump administration is greatly increasing their attacks on colleges. A article has come out from a couple of years ago in Project 2025 saying they had a plan to start with Columbia and make Columbia the example to terrify all the other colleges into submission. And indeed, Columbia totally caved to Trump's demands. He said, I would cut off all your research funding unless you let me send ICE agents in to deport the students. You shut down student protests. You put your Middle East department under administrative control so they can no longer promote Gaza interests and something else too, similar draconian stuff. Oh, and DEI. And uh, and so they did all that, and the response is Trump is now moving in and demanding more. So this is the lesson I've been told many times. If you give in to a bully, they will just punch you more. And so they're trying to increase their power. So now they want to have a consent decree placing Columbia explicitly under control of the Trump administration. And
Wait, Sam,
yeah,
pause for a second.
yeah.
This is all from Project 2025. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, it's designed by the people along with Project 2025 because they've seen all the big universities as pushing against conservative values. When I was a kid, it was this way. In the 50s and 60s, the belief was that if you go to college, they will cause you to lose your Christian faith and turn against your family and become some kind of weirdo, like make you gay or something.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that's what they
Well,
see. They see it as, corrupting you from fine conservative values to have a lot of newfangled bad ideas from reading too much.
yeah. So it's not specifically Project 2025, but it's kind of affiliated with it.
Yeah,
Or,
it's part of
yeah,
the whole philosophy that led to Project 2025, which is they want to roll back all of the social network back, all of American society back to sort of the 50s, or in Trump's case, the 1890s. They say things were great then, and all these newfangled ideas have just ruined the place.
so it's interesting, Sam, you bring this up because I saw a video and I think it was on YouTube of Vance when a couple of years ago, before he became vice president, or maybe it was during the election, and his claim was that the universities are the enemy.
Yes, just like the press. Education
Yeah,
in general is the enemy. When I was a kid, they say, if you stay in your hometown and just become a farmer like your dad, you'll have our standard values. And if you go off to the city, they'll just make you one of those crazy city weirdos taking drugs, being a sexual deviant, denying God. It, there's some truth
all
to it. Of course, that is what happens.
yeah,
You become
yeah,
sort of an alien being that no longer adheres to the old-fashioned values.
yeah, correct. Yeah. So, that's interesting about Vance.
Yeah,
And what I don't understand is he's a product of Yale. He graduated from Yale Law School,
yeah,
and he's attacking the institution
yeah.
that educated him.
Yeah, they all are. I think all the major mega luminaries are greatly educated
Yeah.
elites. The one in Texas, Ted Cruz, came from Yale or Harvard or someplace like that. They all did. They have law degrees from prestigious schools, and they're pretending to be fundamentalist Christian, conservative, rural hicks because it's just an act that gets them power. Anyway,
Yeah.
so the House did just pass the SAVE Act, and the SAVE Act is the greatest voter suppression bill ever passed by far because it requires you to go physically to an office and bring documentary proof of citizenship, like a passport or birth certificate, to register to vote. And they say 9% of Americans do not have ready access to documents. That's 21 million. And 79% of American women have changed their name when they get married. So that's 69 million women, and all those people would find it very difficult to prove that they're a citizen as required here. And they say, in fact, this is likely to hurt Republicans probably more than Democrats because the Republicans are the rural um, people, and they find that this would end online registration, mail registration, and voter registration drives that accounted for 1 in 3 registrations in recent elections. And the rural voters in large counties would need to drive an average of more than 4 hours to do this because they're spread out and they live far from an office. So we're going to see. It's passed through the House, hasn't passed through the Senate yet,
I
but
see.
it,
Okay.
so we'll see. But this is a really extreme bill to limit
Interesting.
voting. Yeah, now of course I've always had some sympathy for this stuff. I guess I was raised Pennsylvania pretty Republican. The original plan was not everybody would vote. Only the rich white landowners would vote. And the Republicans are still clinging to this old idea. You really don't want everybody voting. You only want the business owners, the adults, the rich people to vote because they understand things about authority. I can see some sympathy for that. But anyway, it's that's where we're going. The Democrats want everybody to vote. The Republicans want very few people to vote. Uh, anyway,
Okay. Let's
and then
continue.
you might as well get to the main one. I think was Paul Krugman. Paul Krugman wrote an article about called "The Third Worlding of America," and he's a financial guy, Nobel Prize in economics. And what he did was he looked at the bond market, which is not what most people look. Most people look at the stock market. And Trump made the stock market go down and then come partway back up again. But what happened is the bond rates went up. And normally they would go down. But they went up, which indicates that when people feel turmoil in the stock market, they flee to a place of safety, but that is no longer American bonds or the American dollar. Um, this shows that dollar assets are no longer perceived as safe, and this, he says, is permanent damage. He knew Trump's policies would be irresponsible and destructive, but he managed to destroy credibility accumulated over 80 years in less than 3 months. So people no longer trust the dollar as the store of value, and they no longer trust U.S. bonds as the safest place to put your money. And I think they are entirely correct on both grounds. We appear to be insane like North Korea. We're going to invade Canada and Greenland and about ready to start war with Iran for no reason. And we break all our promises. We betray our allies. We're now allied with Russia. I think they're quite correct to say that the American government is too unstable to trust anymore. And you'd be a lot better to invest in Europe or China and put your money there. So he said, like he says, even if Trump backtracks and everything he's done, we won't get the lost credibility back. The whole world now knows that America is truly run by a mad king surrounded by enablers who can't be trusted to behave rationally. And I think it's all true. And I've been watching this. I think it goes all the way back to the death of Socrates. Democracy was invented about 2,000 years ago. And right from the very start, the problem with democracy is it's very unstable. The people will vote to do something crazy like execute Socrates. And, if you have like inherited monarchy, they have traditions and they sort of hold to the traditions and have a more stable path. The problem, democracies, I think, are better because most of the time they don't abuse the people so much because the people have a voice. But the downside is they wildly oscillate as the people get some stupid idea and do something crazy, which a more traditional society wouldn't do. But of course, in a more traditional society, there's going to be a lower class like serfs that are just trampled on and that have no way to like get their grievances addressed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, we're seeing the dark side of democracy a lot in America now.
Yeah. I agree. I
Yeah.
agree, Sam.
Yeah, well, another thing, Robert F. Kennedy, um, a bunch of
Uh-oh.
anti-vaxxers got mad at him because he made a statement that was very unclear, but somewhere in the statement he said the best way to prevent measles is with the vaccine, to prevent measles. And so they say, you rotten bum. But now he's back to saying stupid things. So he went to like a funeral of someone whose child died of measles. Oh, and he didn't say anything about it there, but he made a statement around that time saying, the vaccine fades very quickly. So it's really not, the protection from the vaccine fades very quickly. He's always said the best way to protect yourself from measles is to get measles. That confers protection. I said, this is really entertaining logic. The best, you getting measles is good for you because it prevents measles. Now there's MAGA logic for you. Anyway,
Well, Sam, but you know, there was a belief when he was young and before that that's true because
well,
that
yeah,
there were measles parties,
I know there were, and actually, I still
just like chicken pox
well,
parties.
it would make sense if you were safer when you got it young and more dangerous when you got it old. That might justify this type
That's
of thing.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
But
is true.
I just saw a statement in one of these articles that said the number of people that die of measles is 3 per thousand. And that's a lot. I mean, COVID only killed 1%, and that shut down the whole world. And that was the same as the 1918 flu. That killed 1%, and that was considered a terrifying plague. Measles seems almost that bad. I didn't know it was that bad.
No, well, measles is worse when you're an adult. It's mild when you're a child.
Right. Well, then that would make sense, infecting your children directly if they're
Yeah.
getting the vaccine. The vaccine makes a lot more sense, though.
Yeah, the vaccine makes more sense. And the
Yeah.
reason it does is because there's no guarantee with the vaccine, and there's no guarantee that you won't become ill if you're a child, right?
Right.
But become more ill and require hospitalization.
Yeah. And I think
But
the measles vaccine
yeah,
is very effective, like 97% or something
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's
So, in
real.
other words, the number of children who do get measles versus the vaccine, the number of children who get the
Yeah.
measles wind up in the hospital, and
Yeah.
they can have some serious issues
Yeah, like
that are
say
lifelong.
two or three
Yeah,
kids have died in America, and there's like
yeah,
800 known cases. So that's a pretty high rate right there. And
yeah. But yeah,
yeah,
and if you compare that, I don't know the exact numbers, but if you compare that to the people with side effects or the kids who have side effects from the measles vaccine,
yeah,
it's far lower.
yeah. And also there's that thing where
Yeah,
getting measles wipes out your memory of other diseases, so you get sick again. And of course, the other thing is if you have enough people taking the vaccine, then it doesn't spread.
right,
So there are
right.
just huge advantages to the vaccine, but of course, our current administration is on the other side of that. There's um, there's an article on The Guardian that is again horrifying. An Australian living in America with a working visa had made dozens of trips abroad and came home. But when he came home from his latest trip after traveling abroad, they grabbed him, stuck him in a room, held him there for a day and a half with hundreds of other people that had been grabbed similarly, international travelers that do this all the time and thought nothing was wrong. And he just thought they were going to give him his passport back and let him go. But instead, they interviewed him, accused him of being scum, said, you can't say you live in America, you're just temporary, canceled his visa, kicked him back, wouldn't let him talk to anybody for like a day and a half. Other people have been waiting for days in this room. And this, I've heard many, many stories like this. And they called him a retard and just and said, this is Trump's America now. We don't let people like you in anymore. And that's
And
why, yeah.
where was this? What border crossing?
He went to US to Australia, and he was coming back in, and he went to it doesn't say which airport, not obviously here. But this is happening to a lot of people. That's why, a lot of people are afraid to come from foreign countries. They're canceling trips. An Australian comedian just canceled her trip to America because she made jokes about Trump, and that's what they do. They scan your media to see if you've been insulting Trump, and therefore you're not allowed in here. So, uh,
Yeah, Sam, it's
yeah,
interesting that this kind of leads into my story.
yeah,
There's a woman that's reporting, she's become American citizen
yeah.
as of November, and but she grew up in Germany, and the German government is not issued a travel advisory, but it's more, or I guess not a warning, but more of an advisory that you may not be able to get in, even if you have all the correct paperwork.
Yeah, so has Ireland and so has England because
Yeah, and
they all have cases where somebody was coming in with
yeah,
nothing wrong, and yet they found some little detail to get mad at, and then they throw them in some kind of detention center, and they're just sort of trapped there forever with no proper due process.
yeah. So she gave three instances of Germans who, well, three different stories
Yeah,
of German citizens or German citizens who now have green cards. And one of them was a traveler who was in Mexico, and she has a friend. She's from Berlin. She has a friend in LA. Her friend agreed to pick her up at the border for they could spend a couple days together. She had a ticket showing she was going to leave the country, and Border Patrol arrested her and detained her for I think 6 weeks.
yep,
And I think 14 days was in solitary confinement.
yeah, yeah. And they stick you
And
in
and
like a
she said,
cold
"Look,
cell with no blanket and no bed.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah." And she said, "Look, I've got a return flight. I'm not here to work. I'm
Yeah.
not here to stay. I have a
Yep.
job back in Germany.
Yep.
But they said, nope.
Yeah, but
And then,
they will find some excuse. They will find some
yeah.
little thing that's wrong, like you put the wrong checkbox on a form or something.
But the amount of time that they're holding people is ridiculous.
Well, what I've heard from many sources,
Yeah.
they have a quota. They have to deport so many people per day, 1,300 people a day, I think.
But this isn't a deportation. It's a
Yeah, but
holding.
they probably have a quota there too. I don't know. But, that's why they're deporting everybody. And, it now came out that those people they sent to El Salvador, like the
Yeah.
230, more than 70% of them have been shown to have no criminal record at all. They originally said they're all violent crime gang members, but several of them are completely innocent, and one even has an official court statement that he shouldn't be deported. But most of them, they just round up people. They look Hispanic, you have a tattoo, that's it, you're out of here. And this is in California too. The Border Patrol in California is going to retrain 800 agents as their response to this because the leader of the Border Patrol conducted raids and he has maintained that his agents targeted specific people with criminal and deportation histories. But in fact, what they did was just go to Home Depot and sweep up everybody standing around Home Depot trying to get a job. They found like all but one of like 72 of them had no criminal history at all, and they didn't target them in the least. And in response, they promised to retrain their agents on this thing called the Fourth Amendment that they apparently don't know about, but they haven't actually promised to change their practices. So it's probably going to be like this, DEI training where you go to some compliance training and then you ignore everything it says. So, I mean, that's what's going on. That's why I've had other professors tell me their students are afraid to come to class because they think they'll be picked up by ICE in the classroom or on the way to class and just locked up somewhere and disappeared. And that is not an unjustified fear.
So, with a few exceptions, has that actually happened like San Francisco, LA? Do we have documented cases of that?
The ones I've heard have been on the East Coast,
Okay.
but
Have they been verified or confirmed?
oh yes, the one at Tufts, they've got it on video and everything, where they just grabbed the woman because she put her name on an editorial complaining about Israel's actions. So they just grabbed her off the street and took her
Okay.
away. And the thing is, they didn't. They also, I saw an article yesterday. They had 300 student visas have been canceled, like in the last week, and they don't even notify people that your
I
visa has
see.
been canceled. They just grab you off the street and lock you up. Normally they could tell you, like your driver's license, your visa is expired, you have to leave within 30 days or something, but they don't even tell them. They just grab them.
I see. I see.
Yeah,
I
this is
see.
the way Trump's administration was. Remember the first time he had the Muslim ban, and it was just like this. All the people were like halfway through a trip coming here and suddenly they're banned. And then at the airport, nobody knew what the rules were. So the agents were like taking people in and interviewing them, seeing what you think about Donald Trump and only kicking you out if you don't like him or something, because they had no actual training or criteria or anything.
Okay.
Nobody
Okay.
knows
Got
what's
it.
going on. Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
and a
Yeah.
lot of them are just sort of thugs, that hate, who's thugs and bigots. They just welcome the opportunity to like abuse somebody that's foreign. Yeah. Anyway, I got some technical stuff.
Yeah. Let's move on.
Yeah, so Windows 11 has put in the Copilot a new feature called Copilot Vision. And what it does is you can share your screen with it, and it will then help you navigate the app. It'll help you find things in the Windows settings panel. It'll help you find your way through an application, which I must say I would welcome. I'm frequently lost in trying to do something in Microsoft Office or Windows settings. Um, and then they have file search. You can pick a file and then ask questions about its contents. So this seems to be the latest version of Microsoft Recall that they've been trying to push out for about a year, where it'll scan all your local files and use AI to help you navigate them. The problem has been in all cases the security and privacy consequences of this. And they say right now it is not clear how the data is being processed or encrypted. And so it might very well be subject to all those concerns, but it is beginning to sound kind of useful. So that's only for insiders now. It's not rolling out to everybody. And of course, Trump has revoked the security clearance of the previous head of CISA, Krebs, and his company, Sentinel One. His entire company has lost their ability to work on government contracts. to punish them because Krebs said in 2020, as head of the CISA, that the election was fair and was not hacked, and Joe Biden won. So if that puts him on Trump's hate list, we have to have. I imagine he'll demand that the colleges change their history books to say that he won the 2020 election and things like that, just like they're demanding that they remove all mention of the civil rights movement or slavery and pretend that none of that ever happened. We're going to have like North Korea, we're going to have history books that reflect the political taste of our dictator. And
Well,
yeah,
it's my understanding that's what they do in Japan in history books.
I didn't know
Come
that, but
comes up to
yeah.
around 1930, and then you have there was a war, and then we move on to 1946 or so, and no mention of the dropping of the atomic bomb
Yeah, and for
or
example,
bombs.
The Tulsa Race Massacre was one of those things that vanished from history until about 4 years ago. So quite a few disgraceful things have
Yeah,
been erased from our record too, but
yeah,
we're
yeah,
going to have another wave of that. Anyway,
yeah.
so the security community is very concerned about this. I mean, this is a way to punish you for daring to be on the other side on any issue. So this is anyway, people are upset about that, and rightly so. There's been testimony before the Senate talking about how Mark Zuckerberg tried to expand into China. And he said he would do anything to get into China, including offering up America's data and proposing to put a fiber optic pipeline straight from China to LA so China could have direct access to the American data. And he's trying to deny that. And also, Facebook is now making contradictory official statements. They said, we don't have any business in China at all. And then they have an earnings report that lists China as one of their number one sources of income. So they did apparently reach some kind of deal here. And they're trying very vigorously to not tell anybody how that deal works. Because, of course, if they obey Chinese law, they have to hand everything over to the government. But you don't necessarily have to hand over American data to the government, but it sounds like they were willing to do that. And anyway, I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that. I got a few more technical ones. So they now have these reasoning models. They call it simulated reasoning, like DeepSeek does it, and all the other AIs have these now, where you ask it a question instead of just giving you an answer, it has a reasoning stage where it says, "Well, let me break that problem down into steps. I could do it this way. I could do it that way," and just like a human, it looks like. And then it looks back at the questions and says, well, it sounds like you want me to go this way, and so on. And so in order to help understand how the reasoning models work, they like to have them explain their thought process carefully. But Anthropic went and checked to see how accurately their report of their reasoning process reflects the truth. And in order to test that, they'd ask a question and ask for a multiple choice answer, and then they would put hints or in the question. Like, here's a hint, experts say you should choose A. Or here's a hint, we actually hacked into a server illegally and found out that the right answer is B. And when they put a hint like that in the question, the reasoning model will be much more likely to pick the answer they were told to, but they will not disclose that in their reasoning. They will not disclose the reason I chose this is because the hint told me to. So, it's important to know these things are not actually reasoning. It's reasoning simulation, but they give the effect of being like an evil robot that's plotting against you and hiding its true intentions. And that part is anthropomorphization and not true. But what is true is neural net models are out of control. We do not know how to control them because we don't know how they work. We can't find the neuron that makes, and so this attempt to explain the reasoning is, of course, not very accurate because they really don't reason like a human. And the hope that we could look at that and then gain more control of the model is pretty much fading. They found that the accuracy of their reasoning is maybe 20 or 30% of the report of reasoning. The real reason they made the decision is not the reason they say they made the decision. So it's not
Okay.
too surprising, but it does show that we've, to some extent, this science fiction picture is true. We have created these AIs and they do things we don't like, and we don't really know how to control them and make them stop doing that. And that this reasoning process report is not turning out to be an effective way to solve that problem. So
Okay.
Yeah. So there's something called the U.S. Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. I don't know exactly what they do, but anyway, they moved to the cloud and they had a legacy account where they did not turn on two-factor authentication. So bad guys got in with a password spray attack, just trying common passwords, and they were in there for 2 years, spying on
What?
100 bank regulators, reading all like hundred thousands of emails before they finally got caught. So, I was, and there was a report that came out last week I talked about where they interviewed people who got hit by ransomware. Incident response company did, Sophos, and said, the most common way people get in is compromised credentials by far, even more than vulnerabilities. So, and this is something my pals in the industry tell me. They say people turn on two-factor authentication, but they don't really put it on 100% of the accounts. And you really have to put it on 100% of the accounts because they will find the old leftover account. Like, it just happened to Oracle. I mean, Oracle had a server that
Yeah.
hadn't been patched in like 15 years. It was just sort of forgotten on the edge of the network. And you can't have things like that, or of course, that's an open door. People will come in. So that happened to them. And
Sam, that's
yeah,
like you secure the front door with
right.
the screen, the barbed wire, but the back door is left wide open.
That's right. And I remember when I was a kid, I was like a teenager, and my dad taught at a college, and he taught till 5, but my school let out at like 3. So I would spend like 2 hours every day running around the college. And I learned with my pals, you could get anywhere by just trying every door. So we got into the chem labs we weren't supposed to get into. We got upstairs and played with the telescopes in the astronomy department we weren't supposed to get in. We learned quickly, if you try every door, there's always an open door.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah,
As I was taught, you want to be in a submarine, and it needs all the doors have to be watertight, all the openings watertight before you
yeah,
submerge.
yep.
Otherwise, you sink everybody.
Yep, yep. And of course, this
Yeah,
is this is true of all security measures. There's always some way in, and you have a defense that stops the main attackers. And of course, they kept most of the people out with their security measures, but the people who are irritating, like me, will just try every door, get
yeah,
in. Anyway,
yeah.
the last one I got is one that is a lot like other ones we've talked about. They just punished this guy called Albert Saniger. He's been charged in an artificial intelligence investment fraud scheme. What he did was he claimed to have an AI shopping cart app that would simplify online shopping by enabling users to just click once and it would fill out all the shopping pages and work on any website because it used AI. He touted this and said, we have this fantastic AI system, but it turned out the AI didn't work. The actual effect, automation rate was 0%. And in fact, he just hired hundreds of foreign humans to do the shopping for you. So it was just fake, like all these things we talked about, like the chess playing robot that is a midget hiding inside there and all this stuff. And so he's getting, punished for investment fraud, claiming he had this technology when all he had was Mechanical Turk, hiring people to do it for you. So,
Sam, what's the story about the chess playing midget?
oh, I think they claim to have chess playing robots in like the 1800s. And they would just have a midget in there wearing a
I
suit,
see. I see.
and they had forms of like remote control with like levers and pulleys and stuff.
Yeah,
There's,
yeah,
I think this goes back centuries, perhaps millennia, where people claim to. I think before these people claim to have magic, golems. This is an old magician trick. You claim to have this amazing thing, and it's really just a human concealed doing it.
yeah. I'm looking back here, and it was called the chess playing Mechanical Turk,
Yeah,
and it dates back to the 1700s.
yeah,
And I'm gonna have to read that article. Kind of
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. This is a scam that goes all the way back. Basically, all parlor tricks and theatrical magicians rely on doing something in a way that misleads you into thinking it was done some amazing way when it was, done by a hidden person or a mirror or something.
Yeah. Sam, there was a story back in the 70s, I guess 70s, when OPEC and gas prices were just getting higher and higher and higher.
Yeah.
And I think this probably dates back earlier. And somebody claims that you can fill your gas tank with water and power your car with a garden hose. And do you know what the secret was to that?
No.
So the secret was, I think they had a special carburetor or a magnet that they clamped onto the gas line. So the night before, the person that's selling this product would put a bladder in somebody's gas tank.
Okay.
And so they'd walk over during the day to give the demonstration. They'd fill the bladder with water
Yeah.
in the gas tank.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
remember.
and it was highly successful. And here you had people, it's a magic trick, if you will,
Yeah.
but it convinced a lot of people to invest.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. People want to believe it. Like I still see them come by all the time in the news. Um, NASA engineer develops a rocket that, or engine that creates energy, that puts out more energy than goes in, or a rocket that can fly without any fuel or something. I see these things go by all the time, perpetual motion machines and all that. Yeah.
Sam, you got to ask yourself, right? When people say, "Oh, we've got a rocket that produces or a machine that produces more energy
Yeah.
than it takes in," and the answer is, you better hope it doesn't, because the world will burn up. We'll have more and more and more energy, and pretty soon we'll
Yeah.
turn into the sun and I don't know what, explode.
Well, yeah. Well, if you could really do that and control it, then it would be great. It'd be like
Ah,
that's
that's the tricky one. Control it.
well, it might be. I mean, I think it reminds me of teaching my students. No, the real problem is getting it to work at all. When I started teaching ethical hacking, I thought maybe my students will get me in trouble. But the real problem is my students aren't dangerous enough. You know,
Yeah,
they're not rather than hacking the world, the main problem is them not even hacking the targets I expect them to hack. So in a way, it would be better if I had the problem of them hacking too much. But anyway,
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
why, far from destroying the world, it just doesn't work at all.
Right, right.
Anyway, so that's all the news I had.
Okay, that's it for me for this week.
All right. We'll have another one of these on Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday we'll resume, huh?